Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach the gullible to never be so comfortable with lies they eat like comfort food, to disregard the bogus claims and pseudoscientific claims? Can you imagine just how much indeed the world would change? No more political predators playing on the populace, but ilkas and plots to shift and kill metropolis. No more villains with the title in the Bible, holding phony temper Bibles like the stuff they teach is vital. Imagine it was normal to have to prove a claim you make, and folks really feel ashamed expressing content that was fake. It's not to say we never make mistakes, it's just to say we go out of our way to show the evidence it takes.
Remain skeptical while you travel the road of reason. Stay strapped with logic and fast. That's what it is, yo. Keep reality intact to help the truth grow. Question every claim, especially the ones you believe in. Remain skeptical while you travel the road of reason.
Hi, welcome to Road to Reason, Skeptic's Guide to the 21st Century. I'm your host, Kayla Turzak, and this is our co-host, Eric Santiago. He's new to the show. It's the first time on, and we welcome him. He's going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself later. For now, we just want to invite you on to our show every Sunday. You can always watch us live on Ustream if you're not in the area at 3 o'clock p.m. on Ustream. If you're in the Fairfax, DC metro area, if you look at channel 36, you will be able to find us as well. If you can't catch us live, you can always go to our YouTube channel, Road to Reason TV. And today we are going to be discussing specifically just atheist communities and what that means to be within an atheist community, the pitfalls of community without. The pitfalls of an atheist community, and also some of the strengths that we have. And we're going to be interviewing Dustin Arand concerning that. We have a couple news items today, but before we get into that, I have a question for you. So how is God just like a regular man?
I have no idea. How?
If you're not on your knees, he's not interested.
Oh my God.
Okay, so as we all know and have heard of, the Oregon shooter went in, it was a couple weeks ago, right?
That was last week.
It was last week. A guy went into a community college in Oregon and shot a couple people. I believe it was 10 people that were actually fatally injured?
I don't think so. I think it was less than that.
Oh, it was less than that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of them pulled through and I think he was just discharged yesterday. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was more interested in talking about some of the reactions to that particular shooting. There's been a couple since then. Specifically, there's been rumors going around that there was religious motivations for this man going into this and shooting up this community college.
Some of the people who were talking about it said he was going from person to person asking them what their beliefs were before he shot them. So a lot of information coming out of that right now. So
a lot of people who are actually involved in that are stating that that's something that he did. And there's also contradictory, eyewitnesses who are saying that's not what he did. I think that the concern I have is over, a lot of religious groups claiming that as religious persecution on a larger scale than actually one man going in and shooting up a church.
Yes.
And I think it can be not dangerous, but can be a little bit deceitful, not deceitful, what word? It's a little bit...
disingenuous.
It's disingenuous to say, big words, great words.
Yeah, sorry.
Disingenuous to say that because one person who claims a certain, he wasn't even an atheist or secular. He did have some religious beliefs. That you can claim out of one outlier going in and doing one thing that there's this larger scale like persecution.
Absolutely, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, it's just the same as like when there was one point in which somebody went into a Planned Parenthood or some kind of an abortion clinic and caused some destruction there.
Same kind of problem. You can't blame all Christians for a few people who have gone to an abortion clinic and blown it up or killed an abortion doctor. You can't blame them all for that.
And you can't even blame the vast majority of them for it.
Exactly.
It's an obvious outlier, especially in the States. A lot of the extreme religious groups, especially in the States, aren't bombing clinics.
Absolutely. And the same thing goes for this case.
Yeah.
Vast majority of atheists are not going to do something like this.
All right. And so our next news item that we'd like to discuss is Columbus Day.
Yeah.
So you looked up a couple states that actually don't do Columbus Day. They've renamed that day.
Yeah. There are about 9 cities that on Monday they just changed laws this year that they won't be calling it Columbus Day. They'll be calling it Indigenous Peoples Day or Native Americans Day. And this is going back to about 1990. I don't remember which city started it. I think it might be Berkeley. I could be wrong. But a lot of cities around the country are changing. And they're not recognizing Columbus Day. They're changing the official title. They're getting their state legislatures to recognize it. So it's good change. So
why do you think people actually began Columbus Day in the first place, a celebration of the day? Well, I guess, if you have a specific kind of whitewashed American outlook on our history, you'd see it as a day of coming in and, conquering and, we created the beginning of America.
I think the premise of the holiday was originally discovery and the idea of exploration, and then celebrating a very well-known explorer. It's pop culture history, in my opinion. So that's my opinion on it.
And so naming it Indigenous Day, what do you think? What kind of effect do you think that has?
I think it's going to have a very positive impact on local Indigenous communities. I think that recognition and celebration of their culture and heritage, that's wonderful. That's a big change. So, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a couple memes that are going around, and they go around every single Columbus Day, if to celebrate Columbus Day, should I go into stores and just take things whenever I want to, that kind of thing.
Yeah, those are pretty funny.
Do you think that there's less of a widespread ignorance on what actually happened when Columbus came to the United States? He didn't come with flowers, he came with diseases.
He did.
He came with conquering, he came with enslavement, killing.
He was looking for the what was it? The three things: God, gold, and glory. That's what he was looking for. So I mean, that's the thing. Celebrating somebody like Columbus. There's a lot of good books about this. Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States covers this era really well about the period where discovery of the New World was just fraught with people taking advantage of these locals and. They did it for hundreds of years, and then they celebrated the people. So it's nice to see that people are recognizing maybe we shouldn't be celebrating people like that. So
absolutely. I think too that a lot of it is a symptom of us as Americans, the kind of narrative that we have constructed around the beginning of our country. The kind of narrative that we've created that, America is this wonderful country that came in and I guess God came in and predestined us to be here and to take over the entire continent.
Oh yeah, the manifest destiny thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of really sketchy history when it comes to, we are owed this by a deity, by a higher power to, expand into the Californias, even though that was a part of Mexico, and, not treat maybe the people there that as well as they could have treated themselves. And,
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So.
All right. So we do have one more announcement concerning David Silverman's book specifically. You wanted to talk about that?
Sure. David Silverman's publishing a new book. It's due out in December 1st. It hits Amazon. It's called Fighting God, an Atheist Manifesto for a Religious World. And I just found out today he'll be doing a book signing in the DC metro area here in the next couple months, next 2 months. So look out for events. You'll be able to come out to it. You meet Dave Silverman, get a book signed. It's fantastic. He'll either be doing that in the next couple months or he'll be doing it in January. So just look for events online, on meetups, on the Facebook groups.
What do you think the book is about specifically? Have you heard him speak about the book?
I have not. I'm actually kind of very curious about this because he's always got a really unique perspective on how to push atheism and how to fight religion. He's always got a very unique view on it because he's looking at it from the director of American Atheists. It's a huge thing. It's a huge organization. It's got a lot of memberships. It's got dues. It's got great organization. It's just. I'm really curious what's in this book and what he has to say.
Has he ever written a book before?
I don't know, actually.
Okay. So you think the book is probably more about organization of atheists in general as opposed to... That's kind of on topic today of what we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely. Really cool. I'm really hoping that it acts as kind of like a guide of how we can organize and how we can,
Yeah, get our voice out and make sure that, people understand that we're normal human beings, but we do have a message.
Yep, we're just like them. We're humans.
All right. So. Well, so how about some more jokes?
Yeah, go for it.
So I did want to go over, there's this really cool joke. How do you teach a bunch of kids about God, who he is and what he does?
How do you do that?
So you put all the kids in a room, and then you never show up.
Gosh.
So, but yeah, I think that, like, especially when it comes to, like, our perspectives, I know we kind of, you know, got out of the, you know, talking about the perspective of Columbus Day. I think that, like, Columbus Day, as well as, like, the Oregon shooter, like, when things happen within history, I think that we do always create a narrative.
Oh yeah, it's pop culture history.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As soon as an event happens, as soon as something is in the news, people start creating a narrative around it. How did this affect this? And they go on and they try and figure out how they can use it to their ends. I think everybody does that. I
think everybody does that, but, like, you know, before when we were talking about, like, Columbus specifically, I think, like, I really think it's interesting how, like, because I went to a private Christian school, the narrative can be so different coming out of, like, a private Christian school as opposed to, like, a public school. Do you feel like the narrative was a lot different when it came to?
Well, I was in high school when the Columbine shooting happened, and I think actually I just graduated. That shooting really changed a lot of people's opinions about what it meant to feel safe at school. And I don't have the experience of private schools. Of public schools, the conversation really changed about, like, how bullying was discussed and how there were these kids that were on the outside who weren't really getting the kind of attention they needed. And how do we bring them in? How do we get them talking? How do we get them... And I think we have that problem in the atheist community, like to tie it all back together. I think that we have a lot of people out there who feel isolated and feel alone, and they don't feel like they have anywhere they belong. So it's kind of the same problem. It's this, I guess, need that isn't being fulfilled. To
create an identity, to have a group to be a part of.
Yeah, to feel like a valued member, you know, a valued part of society. I think that all kind of, that's the theme running through all these things.
That's true. All right, so we're going to go into some PSAs, and then we're going to come back and speak specifically to what it means to have an atheist community or a secular community outside of religion.
Surprise!
Preventing wildfires. That's all Smokey wants for his 70th birthday.
Thank you, dear. Well, you're very supple, just like I was at your age. Back then, I was a sex expert. Used to call me the buttered biscuit. I know about birth control, too. So you can ask me anything, baby.
Bedsider.org has birth control information and a lot more. And it's...
Have you had sex in this car yet?
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humor, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait. Look at them now on Facebook and YouTube, and remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
Looks like it's done.
Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. You can't see these microbes, but they might be there. So learn the right temperature to cook each type of meat. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Having trouble finding Connor's middle school? Would you like directions?
No, why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Finding lowest airfare to Istanbul.
No, I'm tired of fighting with him over homework.
Home, walk, restaurant. Need a review?
No, I need help. He's very smart, but his mind wanders. He's disorganized.
I think I understand.
Oh, good.
French fries. Finding best potatoes.
No!
Russet. Fingerling. Yukon Bowl.
Why don't you understand me?
Sorry, I was trying to show how Connor feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
For the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues, this is what life can feel like. Explore understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues, designed to help your child thrive in school and in life. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
Road to Reason, The Skeptic's Guide to the 21st Century. We're back to discuss secular and humanist atheist groups and support groups for people who have left religion. But before we do so, we have a new host on our show, Eric Santiago. He's going to be a consistent part of our show. And I'd like to go over a little bit about who you are as a person and why you want to be a part of the show. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay.
Introduce your...
I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I joined in 2001. I served during both of the conflicts, Iraqi freedom, Afghan, or enduring freedom is what they called it. I've been working in the D.C. metro area for about 12 years now. So I write website software. I've been an activist since 2007. I was on the board of Beltway Atheist for a little while, and I was their communications director. Let's see. I do some work with HaFree, Hispanic American Freethinkers. I don't know if you're familiar with that group.
Oh, no, I'm a part of the group.
Oh, right on. Yeah, so...
Not Hispanic American, but...
Definitely welcome as a
help.
member. Yeah, excellent. So that's basically my history since graduating high school. Before that, becoming an atheist, interesting story. My mom had a lot of curiosity about religion, so she participated in Jehovah's Witnesses for a while. She was a Pentecostal Christian for a while, and I kind of got dragged along to participate in those also. And then when I joined the Army, I started reading a lot of, I guess, the normal stuff that leads people there. Oh, what's that? Sorry.
That's okay.
It was normal process, everybody goes through that period where they start reading documents about reason, classic authors, classic works. They kind of reach that enlightenment stage, and that was it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've been involved in a lot of different groups, and we'll definitely hear more about you personally as, you've been in the show for a while. And it sounds like you've also been a part of a lot of atheist groups, and it's been a part of, who you are, why you're here today.
A lot of different types of groups too. Socrates Cafe, lots of different kinds of groups. A couple of wine groups in the area.
Pretty cool.
Northern Virginia's fantastic for wine. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
Drinking Skeptically.
Drinking Skeptically, another group. Yeah.
All right, and we also have our guest today, Dustin, Arand, and he is an author of Truth Evolves, and he's also involved with Recovering from Religion, which is an amazing group that helps people who are in transitioning out of a religious group but may not have the tools necessary to start thinking about, communities or what they would like to be a part of to replace that, the religious organization. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Recovering from Religion specifically?
Sure. Well, like you said, Recovering from Religion is an organization that's there to basically provide a kind of safe space for people who are thinking about maybe leaving their religion or have questions, but maybe can't air them to family or friends because all their family or friends are part of the church. And also for people who've left their religion behind and are looking for some kind of community of like-minded people or people with similar experiences. So it's a great organization. There's chapters all over the country, and I believe now a few in the United Kingdom as well. I started this chapter in Alexandria, I think 3 years ago now, and we regularly have pretty good attendance, between a half dozen to a dozen people for our monthly meetings. In fact, one of your co-hosts, Bridget, is a member of our group, and she's actually taken up a leadership role. She's hosting a second monthly meeting now because there was that much demand for people to get together and talk about things. And we talk about our experiences, obviously, with religion and leaving religion, but it goes a lot broader than that. And we talk about politics, we talk about philosophy, we talk about pretty much anything, current events. But it's just like a lot of people who have something in common here and who like to share their experiences, and we all know that we are somewhat similar interests because we took the time to look up atheist groups, and find that community. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it if you're thinking about leaving your religion, if you've left your religion and you want to find people who have similar experiences to talk to. We're called Recovering from Religion. You can look us up on the internet, recoveringfromreligion.org. No matter where you are in the country, you can look. There's a little function there for you to find a group near you. Like I said, they're all over the country. We have our monthly meetings, usually the third Saturday of the month in Alexandria at San Elmo's Cafe. Look us up. We're always, welcoming new people.
That's really cool. I was a part of, that's how we met, actually, getting involved in that group. And one of the things that I realized coming out of, especially a high control group that I was a part of the ICOC, and they're a lot more controlling than maybe a Baptist church. I was like I was running on a treadmill. And when you get off of a treadmill after running for a while, you still feel like you're moving and you're disoriented and you feel like you're shaky. And, if you're it can be beneficial to have somebody come and help steady you. And I kind of felt like that group helped assure me, I was already at a point where I did not know what to do, but I knew I didn't believe it.
Yeah. Well, it's just important to have someone who can listen.
Yeah.
And so you're going to find a lot of usually sympathetic ears, because a lot of the folks who are there have gone through something similar. My background is I was raised Catholic, and actually I didn't have a bad experience with religion per se. I mean, I went to Catholic schools. But I got to a point where it didn't make sense to me anymore, and I just kind of gradually died off in me. I don't think I really had much of a religious sentiment in me in the first place, right? I didn't ever pray, or if I ever tried to pray, I didn't feel like it did anything. But I thought, well, I've been an atheist now for 20 years, and I've got. I feel like I have a handle on my life, so I can maybe help people who are really struggling right now by being a kind of calm influence there to listen to them and answer some of their questions, especially if they're going through a tough time. But we have a pretty diverse group. We've got people who are ex-Mormons, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, even ex-Muslim, other former Catholics like myself. So a pretty diverse group, and like you said, people who come from your background, similar or fundamentalist groups, even people who maybe were homeschooled and never even interacted with anyone who wasn't part of their family's church until they were college age.
Family.
Right. I mean, you can imagine you can have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. So it's a really great thing then to have that where you can provide some support, some answers.
Even something as simple as how do I make a friend?
Right.
Like the church I was a part of. I mean, I wasn't a part of my entire life, so coming out of it, I was able to kind of get back into just life in general pretty quickly. But I think that a lot of people coming from, let's say, a Jehovah's Witness church that they grew up in, or if they were homeschooled, or in an environment where they didn't get to interact with people outside of that group, a lot of times there's a lot of demonizing and a lot of fear mongering when it comes to that outside group. So once you get to the point where you don't believe it anymore, you go, oh my God, what do I do? If I go out into the world, it's going to kill me. I'm going to make the wrong mistake and get drunk and left on the side of a gutter one day. And there's a lot of fear involved in making a friend. Who do I trust? I can't make friends as easy because there's not this underlying, we have something equal, like something in common. So I think that recovering from religion is a really great, like, segue into that. So how do you feel that recovering from religion is like different, better, worse than other atheist groups in the area?
Well, I've joined on, and I should say a little plug here. Our group is on Meetup, and a lot of other groups, atheist or skeptics or freethinker groups, are also on Meetup. That's a good way to find these groups if you're looking for them. So how are they different? Well, I imagine one way that they're different is that no one is taking for granted that you are like full-on atheist. Okay, like there are people who come to our meetings who might still be religious or might just have left or not sure what they believe anymore, right? So the point of the group is to listen to each other's stories and questions and try to like talk through it. And then there's usually plenty of time to talk about other things. Like I said, we talk about all kinds of stuff, philosophy, politics, whatever. But one rule we do have is we don't allow proselytizing. So you can be religious and come to the meeting. That's fine. That's the point, is that you can come and ask questions that you might not be able to ask elsewhere. But it's not a place for like trying to convert people. Right? Yeah. Even I'm not trying to like convert people to be like atheist activists. I'm really interested in finding out, like almost like an anthropologist, like what was your experience like? You know what I mean?
That's fascinating too, like getting to know people and their experiences.
Whereas I think in a lot of these other atheist groups, they just kind of take for granted that you're pretty like hardcore or something.
Yeah.
Or they assume it. Yeah. They assume that you're totally on message. You want to be an activist. You want to help more people becoming. Yeah, there's a lot of groups like that.
And then they say things in like somebody just coming out of religion. It's just like, oh my God, like why would you say that? Like there are certain things that I held to, like my love of worship, my love of the Bible. There's a lot of things that I really appreciated even coming away from religion, and people would just say such sacrilegious things, and I'd just be like, oh my God, So, you've been a part of other atheist groups and meetups. What do you feel is one of the benefits of having that kind of group?
I think that you have an opportunity to socialize. I think that we discussed this a while ago about how after leaving religion you choose to be isolated. And you choose to separate yourself just because you don't know what to do. And a lot of times that's the case. The benefit of the local groups here is a lot of it's very social activity, so they get people out of their home, they get them out meeting people. They may or may not be religious that you'll be meeting. You may be doing something that you've never done before in some of these meetups. You may be discussing a topic that you're either unfamiliar with. You can learn about what to read, books that you might be interested in. I think that's the main benefit for a lot of the local groups. I think you have a learning experience opportunity. So.
I think a lot of folks, they feel like the one thing they miss the most is this sense of community, of belonging to something. I've asked other members of our group, of the Recovering from Religion group, what they miss the most, and then being part of that close-knit community. And maybe it has to do with the demographic change now, where young people are leaving home and traveling across the country for jobs or for school more, and that has, on the one hand, made it easier to leave a faith community, right?
Absolutely.
But at the other hand, it's also made it harder than to find a new community, right? I mean, one of the ways that you can find a new community if you go away to college or go to work is to go join a church. That's like the church that you had when you were back home. So finding that community is essential. I think that's part of like human nature. So one thing that I think the secular community has to think about is atheism can't just be lack of belief in gods. I think it could be that. I don't think it has to be that. And I don't think it really is that. I think most people who come to atheism do so because they have certain fundamental values, underlying values. They're curious people. They tend to be people who are, I think, more intellectually honest in the sense that, if there's some idea they might like it, if it were true, they might like to believe it, but they just can't bring themselves to, because they feel like, look, on some level I know this isn't credible. I know that there's no evidence for it, or the evidence for it isn't credible. I think they also have a sense of wonder at nature, and a desire for answers that fit in more with their experience and with a broader array of knowledge than just what they were taught by their church, the narrow doctrine of their church. So there are these underlying values, and again, another value in the secular community, I think, is a kind of egalitarianism.
Oh, absolutely.
Where there's a distrust, a suspicion of authority, especially religious authority, in a sense that everybody should be able to express their ideas, should be able to free thought, should be able to argue. People should be respected, even if ideas aren't necessarily deserving of respect, but people should be able to air their ideas, and we should be able to we should be able to
people are
debate.
sacred.
Yeah.
People are sacred, but the ideas that they produce
so there's
are not.
so there are I think there are some values around which the secular community orbits.
Absolutely. There's some level of philanthropy there too.
Exactly.
They do like doing good things for other people, just for the sake of doing them. Just the reward is the fact that you did something good for someone. So
I actually wanted to talk about leadership within the atheist community. It was something that I didn't think about until you brought that up. There's a fear of coercion. There's a fear of being bullied into believing something that you don't want to or doing something you don't want to, especially because a good portion of, atheist secular humanists came from a religious background that did that to them. How do you feel that we act towards leadership? And do you think it's beneficial?
I can go for it.
Beneficial or negative?
I think that
or both?
I think that every group has had some level of drama dealing with leadership struggles. Every group deals with it. And the problem is a lot of some of the groups that have stood up in the DC area have been pretty nefarious. They've taken advantage of some people. Some haven't. Some have done really good things.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, I don't want to name names right on the air, but there have been some incidents I've heard about where they've been predatory to some degree, and those are the kind of things that we don't want to see. We want to see leadership that's very open and very transparent, and not out to get anybody, not out to take an advantage over someone. But I guess that's human nature. People are going to take advantage of other people all the time. Generally, there have been a couple really great people who are really great leaders, and they lead the groups that I stay involved with. If I find out, somebody might not be a good leader, I distance myself. And I think that's pretty much what most people would do. As soon as they discover a leader they don't trust, or they say something they don't like, they distance themselves from it.
Yeah. The kind of people who are attracted to atheist secular groups tend to be, like we were talking about, there's this base of really great things, which is like the desire to understand and be intellectually honest, the desire to egalitarian and things such as that. But we're also very individualistic. We're very independent.
Yes.
And I think that those sound like really great traits until you try to get a group together that's trying to act towards a goal, which could be to create a community where people can go for, support. How do you see that acting within atheist communities? How can we remedy that?
I think the way that you prevent very fractious a group is to have different groups that focus on different issues.
I would agree with that 100%.
And all of those groups can have in common that they share this, concern for free thought, for a separation of church and state, for things like that, even as they go their own separate ways in terms of focusing on particular issues, like Recovering from Religion focuses on helping people with that transition, or after the transition's been made, helping them find a community or talk about their experiences. And then there are other groups for people who like drinking skeptically. You just want to hang out with people aren't going to be really religious and have a few drinks. Then you can do that too. So there's just a menu of options. But then it's good also, I think, to have things like Aposticons or Reason Rally, where everybody gets together from these different groups and shares ideas and shares stories. And
it's a good feeling.
Yeah, because then you can
like-minded people.
So anyway, in a lot of ways, it's just a microcosm of the human experience, where we find communities within communimunities, right?
So we do have a caller on the phone, Supriya.
Yes.
I hope I said your name correctly. It's nice to meet you. Do you have a question for us or a statement?
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Supriya, and I am the president of the Secular Student Alliance at VCU.
Ooh.
Awesome.
Well, more than a question, I actually wanted to add something to the discussion. I heard you talking about the idea of leadership within the secular community, and I feel like making individuals feel like they are part of a group and providing a platform for them to share their worldviews is very important, and that really helps them kind of garner more courage in terms of speaking out. And I can testify to this myself in the sense that early on, just starting out, I did not feel very comfortable identifying myself as atheist. This is just very difficult. Whenever the issue of religion came up, I would try to avoid it or not discuss it in detail in my own social circles. Of course, I was very interested in talking about it within the club, but I always had trouble speaking about it outside of it. However, as the club has progressed and as we've grown to new membership, I've begun to feel like I have more people who share my views and who do support me. And I've really noticed that I've become much more vocal in terms of sharing the fact that I'm an atheist and that I hold secular values to be tantamount in just regular everyday discussions. It just comes out very naturally now. And I've really noticed that change.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and being able to also support other people. I'm sure there's people who come to your group who just need a place and almost get a sigh of relief being able to come to your group. So you are a leader in the group, correct? You said you're the president?
Yes, I am.
That's really cool. So what does it feel like do you feel like as a leader there's a lot of pressure on you to be a certain way, or do you feel like there's a lot of criticism of you more than maybe a religious leader would get? Is that beneficial, not beneficial? What are your thoughts on leadership?
Could you repeat the part where, what did you say regarding criticism about leadership? Like, how did I feel in terms of...
So do you feel that being a part of a secular community or an atheist community, there tends to be less trust and more criticism of the leaders? Do you feel extra pressure because, as opposed to maybe a religious leader or a part of a religious student group?
So I do have a few experiences of attending Bible study meetings. Just out of curiosity, and I attended as an observer. And so comparing the structure of meetings there with the meetings that we have, I would say that we tend to have more interaction, and definitely there's much more opposition and dissent going on. Whenever someone doesn't agree, I feel that they are freer to speak up and complain about something or point out something. So I think that I would agree in a way. I would say yes. There's definitely more criticism to be experienced as a leader in a secular circle or a secular group, but I think that it's definitely for the positive. That's a good thing, I would say.
It also makes sure that the person who's in charge really wants to be. It's not about power. If you're in a part of a religious group and you're not allowed to criticize your leader, that leader can hold and wield a lot of power. Whereas if you're allowed to criticize your leader, the person who's there isn't there just to wield power, because they can't. And I think that speaks a lot to those who do successfully create great atheist secular spaces. So thank you for being a leader within the community. I really appreciate that, and honestly,
Can I ask Supriya one question before she goes? Would you say that for you, atheism or secularism is actually a positive identity and not merely the absence of religious belief, but is actually an important part of your sense of who you are as a person?
That's a very good question.
I've thought about that for a very long time, and I do have to admit that I've had to battle with phases of depression. And at those times, just the idea of reaching out to community has been very important. And during those times when I, at the time, did not have contact to a secular community, I was going through some tough times. And I really was reaching some kind of a crisis point where I wasn't sure whether this was a positive thing, whether I could draw anything positive from it. However, after a lot of internal rumination, I found myself arriving at the conclusion that it was positive, because I think that it has a lot to do with the idea of responsibility, and just feeling that at the end of the day, if I want something positive to happen, it's up to me. There's no higher entity, there's no grand plan designed for all of us or anything like that. The idea of initiative became much more powerful. I know that there are a lot of criticisms about atheism in that it's just a lack of or an absence of, and in a sense that's true, because I feel that definition allows for diversity. That's the only bare minimum criteria you need to declare in order to be an atheist. Otherwise, you can be of any profession, any kind of political inclination, and I think that's a good framework as a definition. But I do feel that it's a kind of gateway into further positive ideals.
Right. I absolutely agree, and thank you so much for doing what you're doing, Supriya.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for calling. Anytime. Have a great day.
No, that's a very important point. One that I talk a lot about in my book, about how essential it is to take personal responsibility for our beliefs. And the thing is, when you have a dogma there that's like take it or leave it, you can basically throw up your hands and say, well, I can, for example, be opposed to same-sex marriage and not have to be responsible for the political consequences of that.
It's God. I'm not judging you. God's judging you.
Right. It's like, oh, it's in the Bible, so what can I do? My hands are tied.
Yeah.
No, like, you really have to think these things through, because you're a human being. You have the power of reason. You have the ability to go out there and find out the information and process it and come to your own conclusions. And that's something I think that we all have a responsibility to do.
Absolutely. I like the question concerning identity, whether or not atheism can be a positive identity as opposed to a negative, I don't believe. And I think that, loosely speaking, if you don't take the actual, everybody screams, oh no, atheist just means you don't believe in God. If you do extend that to say, like, oh, it's a community of people who all don't believe in this, in this idea of a deity, it can be a really positive.
It can. I think one thing you have to do is you have to dispel this idea that if atheism means a positive identity and not merely a lack of belief, that I think a lot of atheists would be suspicious of that. Like, well, what are you trying to force some kind of dogma on me? But that's absolutely not. I mean, if you look at any community in the United States, you take any like ethnic community, religious community, whatever. There are going to be people within that community who have disagreements about what it means to have that as an identity.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, you see that all the time.
Atheists are no different. So we have, what I mean? There's going to be a huge spectrum of interpretations of what that means to you individually.
But ultimately, I think, when it comes to the actual meaning of atheism, I think it can be summed up in the fact that we can't say that there's the no true Scotsman. We can't say, oh, that person wasn't really an atheist. They don't believe in God. You're an atheist. It doesn't mean that you've taken that on you. You can call yourself agnostic or whatever you want, but you don't have to be a part of the community or a part of a dogma or agree with anything in particular. But I think when it comes to positive identity, it's attaching all those other things to it that you can attach to it because you no longer believe in a God that creates it into more of a positive. Like
just because I tell you I'm an atheist doesn't you shouldn't necessarily be able to infer anything about my political beliefs. Although I'm sure you could infer some. Like obviously I'm probably not going to be in favor of putting the 10 Commandments up in the courthouse. But you're not going to be able to know, for example, what is my position on the Trans-Pacific Pact or whatever, right? But you will probably be able to infer some things about some values that I have, right? And
just like when someone
says
the
intellectual honesty or curiosity or interest in
be able to tell whether or not you want to be transparent.
So I think that's what we're really getting at, rather than a prescribed set of things that you have to believe. No atheist has to believe any prescribed set of things. What atheists usually have in common is those kind of underlying values that can then manifest themselves in all kinds of ways in our lives, right?
Absolutely.
I'll be paraphrasing a definition of atheism that I read. It's a pop thing. It's a meme that atheism is a serious relationship with reality. So I like that definition. That the only thing that we all have in common is we take things very seriously when it comes to reality. We don't just say, I'm going to believe this and be willy-nilly about it.
And I think one of the important things that the secular community can promote is the idea of intellectual diversity, because in an inbred culture or where everyone believes the same thing and everyone is taught the same thing, there's not going to be any dynamism there, right? There's not going to be any creativity there. What you need people with different points of view and different background coming together and arguing over their, as long as it's done in a civil way and encourages respect for the individual, I think that's how you get such a dynamic, creative culture.
We had a secular debate at one I was watching online the other day that Matt Dillahunty did, and it was about whether there's a secular argument for making it illegal to get an abortion, at a conference. Granted, I felt like she lost, but ultimately we can have discussions with people with varying views.
Because ultimately that's a philosophical question about personhood, and it's a political question about what are the consequences of making political decisions. And you don't have to just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you have to have one opinion or the other about it.
No, it means you can still be thinking about it.
Right. I mean, just totally because religions have staked out a territory or staked out a, it's funny we're coming up on the Columbus Day holiday here, and it occurs to me that religion, much like the conquistadors, has planted its flag on a lot of previously occupied territory. Human beings have been disagreeing about morality and ethics. This is part of the human condition about beauty and things like that for long before organized religions staked out various positions. So we're perfectly capable, one, of being moral, but two, of having some substantive, interesting conversations about morality and ethics and aesthetics and these other areas that religion has laid claim to without actually being part of organized religion.
That's true. And religion also has laid claim to, very good, close-knit groups that are outside of our families. Yeah. If you're going to a group that, for instance, when I was a part of my church, I could call someone up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd have 15 people that I could call, and because we were a part of that church together, they would come and help me if I needed help, or talk to me if I was having an issue, like an emotional issue or something like that. And that's just not the same thing that I found outside of. I've had that with a couple close friends.
Network,
but they have such a monopoly right now on that kind of group friendships, that kind of group cohesion. And I think that there can be. Do you feel like there can be something really great to learn from the way that religions do their group work?
Sure. I think when you talk about your friends that were in your church and how you could got each other, you had so much shared context and history there. And one thing maybe the secular community hasn't done enough is to highlight the intellectual history of secular thinkers, or they don't even have to necessarily be non-religious thinkers. Let's take someone like William James,
or Einstein.
They were probably pretty secular individuals. I think William James was agnostic, but he wrote about religion. We have people like John Dewey, people like Richard Rorty, other philosophers in America, but also in the continent, who took a more secular view of knowledge and of human existence. And I feel like if we promoted, a kind of familiarity with this body of ideas, we'd have a shared kind of a cultural canon of secular thinkers that we could. And it doesn't have to just be the hardcore atheists. I'm not talking about the Four Horsemen or the polemicists of the atheist movement. I'm talking about just generally speaking, philosophers, thinkers, novelists who have gone outside of the mold, of traditional values or traditional religion, and tried to expand our view of the world. That could be a good way to build up a common context or cultural context that could help us relate to each other better.
Yeah, I think that can be definitely a part of it.
I think it should be.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said of authors that may not be agnostic, skeptical, atheists.
Yeah.
People who may be very religious but espouse ideas that are wonderful.
I'll give you another example. Paul Tillich, who's a theologian, Protestant theologian, but his argument about ultimate concern, he would say, you may not believe in God, but you're going to have faith in something, because there's going to be something in your life that's so important. You're going to live for it. You're going to sacrifice for it, and the point is that you better be careful what you choose. right? If you make it about money or fame or something else that's going to be fleeting and not worthwhile, you're going to regret that choice later, right? So that's another important thing. Like, I don't hear a lot of like atheist authors or writers or talking about these issues, but maybe they should. I mean, maybe because especially if you've just left religion, this is something you care about a lot, right?
You do want somewhere to go.
You want okay. So what is it like? They want to ask, what do you believe in? When they ask, what do you believe in? They're not looking for a list of facts. They're looking for the answer to that question. What is it that ultimately matters?
What drives you?
What are your values?
It's an existential question.
Yeah.
And I don't think the secular community has done such a great job so far of answering that.
Yeah.
I think it's because there's not really a homogenous
there isn't
thing out there that
more of
describes
you have to figure it out yourself.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
But one thing we could do is point them in the direction of past thinkers who have written a lot about this question from more of a secular perspective.
Get them asking questions. Get them thinking about what the answer should be, rather than telling them here's the answer.
Exactly.
There are some things that I miss about churches that I think that we could tap into, though, that aren't as much intellectual and more emotional. I feel that I think that a lot of groups like these, the issue that I have is they deal with the head, but they don't necessarily deal with the heart the same way. And I think that ultimately that is what I look for in a community. Is I can have this heart and soul connection with somebody else, even if I disagree with what they believe and what they think about. And I like the idea of having that connection with a good amount of people. Simple things like I miss standing in church and singing. I miss praying together, like with my hands on somebody else's shoulder. Like I miss that meditative feeling of being able to hold and touch somebody, a whole group of people, and in unison doing things together. And it's almost taboo to feel that way when you bring it up, because there's so much hurt involved and fear involved in groupthink. But groupthink can be a good thing if at the same time you're allowed to criticize the group.
I think it's becoming safer now to air that kind of thought among a group of atheist friends who maybe 10 years ago would have been suspicious, because like you're starting to sound like, because back then it's only recently become easier to come out as an atheist. It's like Supriya said, where she had that reticence about telling people. And I think we've all probably had that, right? But things are changing now. We're starting to see demographically, a much larger share of people in our generation, don't identify with.
A lot more tolerant.
Yeah, a lot more tolerant of people who are not religious at all, don't have any particular religious beliefs. So it is getting easier to actually say, you know what, the secular community does also care about what, for lack of a better word, you might call spirituality or whatever, just because we don't have another way to talk about it. But like
emotional health.
That emotional health, whatever, that sense of wanting to be part of something larger than yourself, right? That's just part of the human condition. Religion doesn't have a monopoly on that.
No, they don't.
No,
it shouldn't.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, is that I feel that because there is negative feelings towards certain religious rituals. I love the rituals. That's the thing, is I never dislike the ritualistic aspect of religion.
There's an aesthetic that can be quite pleasing.
The group rituals where you could connect to people that
I think
way.
that touches on a bigger problem that the atheist communities, activist groups are facing. They don't really have a facility or a brick and mortar place to actually go and spend time together.
Physical.
Yeah, there's no physical environment that they have that's a safe place where anybody who's recovering from religion can go and be safe and get the assistance they need.
There are groups around the country, and some of them do have facilities, but unfortunately, not every major city has.
Yeah, see, I'm not disparaging. I'm saying that this is a need that maybe should be filled. Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
Imagine, like this story, for instance. My friend is on the board and helping organize the Hoffrey camping trip.
Oh yeah, the 17th, right?
Yeah.
Camping trip.
Wait. It's going to be so much fun. I love Hoffrey because they get the whole heart and soul thing going on. I love those people. But at any rate, so basically they went up to this campground and they said, hey, we would like to, rent, reserve this spot and, have a camp out. And they're like, oh, what church are you from? So even in a public, it's a public Lisavania State Park or something, a public area, And there was hesitation. As soon as we said, oh, well, we don't really not a part of the church, or kind of the secular group, they hesitated and had to go and ask their boss whether that was okay.
Really?
Something as
Are we
simple
allowed
as...
to let these guys use the
Exactly.
place?
Not having a physical place where you can go means having to explain yourself anywhere you go.
Right.
And that can be a big deal, too. Just all like, well, we can't have alcohol the same way. I mean, it's a small thing, but, you know...
It's a huge problem that needs to be addressed, and I don't know how to address it. I don't know anybody who is looking at addressing it, except for these recovering groups who they have to set up these facilities because these people have nowhere else to go.
And you can look for like ethical societies in your area if there are any.
There are some, ethical societies.
I don't know if there's one in this area, but... Sorry?
No, I don't know.
A lot of like humanist groups and meetups, those ethical, they're like older people with older kids, and I'm just like, 25. Anyway.
I mean, I'm from Missouri, from the St. Louis area. We have an ethical society there in Clayton.
Beautiful building.
And I think there's a humanist organization here that meets in the Unitarian Church in Arlington. So they exist, but...
solely atheist owned.
They can be hard to find if you don't know about them.
And maybe that's the other problem is there needs to be distribution of the information about it.
Sure, and that's why I said before, go to meetup.com.
Find them,
all those things that churches do, they do well.
Yeah.
And they do well because they've been doing it for so long and had such a big monopoly on it. And so I think that when I was talking about churches in general, I think there's a lot of things that we should not be rejecting from churches. So, definitely.
The music, for sure.
The music. I miss hymns. I miss singing.
There's also arts and crafts. There's lots of beautiful murals that have been painted for churches that I would love to see one that's painted for the non-religious community. That'd be great.
Definitely.
Whenever I go to Europe, I always find myself in the old Gothic cathedrals, just to sit and admire the architecture.
Something to breathe in, literally. It's kind of like being in a forest, like alone, except for you get to marvel at our own creations, our own.
So hopefully the secular community will do a better job in the future of speaking to that need for a sense of aesthetics, an ethical philosophy, a moral philosophy going forward.
Okay, so we have about a minute left. I know that you have a book that you've written, and I'd love you to be able to plug your book again. It's a really great one. You'd like to say a word for it.
Sure. So the book is called Truth Evolves, and it looks at questions of epistemology, that's our theory of knowledge, and ethics from the standpoint of evolutionary theory. And basically the thesis is that all adaptations are a kind of knowledge about the environment, and we should try to find those means that are most likely to be self-correcting to gain knowledge. In other words, we should embrace that evolutionary perspective and use trial and error and learning from our mistakes to gain knowledge.
Very cool. All right, join us next Sunday at 3 o'clock. We'd love to have you.
Nice.
Sorry.